Sumeru is one of the fresh nations in Genshin Impact, and it is damn overwhelming. There's so much content, and on top of that, it's actually a good set of content. Some stuff might be a little hard at times, such as the Great Red Sand or Real Big World quests, but in the end, Sumeru is one of my favourites. I can legally speak about this as I'm an expert, and I've thoroughly explored the desert, done the Aranyaka quest and Golden Slumber, alongside having like a level 7 or 8 statue level without guides. Let's talk about it, and spoilers of course, I won't flex again. Sumeru has very interesting terrain, mixing up all previous terrain types into one delicious bowl of Sab's meat stew. It's got water bodies with wave riders, large mountains and open fields. It's also where layered maps become the norm. The amount of caves is insane really. Same with the Great Red Sand, which has plenty of caves, maybe a little too much, and a bunch of underground temples, though I doubt a lot of you knew that. This nation likes to help you with a lot of stuff, which I find interesting due to the stark difference that is the nation right before it, Inazuma. I have a whole video on this topic, but Inazuma effectively bullies you by forcing you to have an Electro character on hand, making you level up your Electro Grunner, wrap your head around complicated systems, and finally get harassed by superly hostile mechanics. Sumeru was the complete opposite. All the puzzles are simply shooting stuff with Dendro Grunner, basic things from other nations, or the Withering. The most annoying puzzles in my opinion are the TIghnari seeds really. However, I won't talk too much about this until the gameplay section. Just remember that the stamina flowers, grabby sigil things, and Dendro Grunner all make for some easy fun. I reckon this is because it's directly connected to the other nations while something like Inazuma is split apart. Anyway, massive trees sprawl the place with a lot of big, tall mountains being able to flourish frequently due to the grabby sigils keeping it easy to traverse. The variety is insane, with one place having colossal tall trees that you must climb, while the other places like Port Almost or Sumeru City exist. There's also a mushroom forest. Sumeru was like the modern day Mondstadt, with the same welcoming, fun charm yet with the modern complexity of existing nations. However, this is only the rainforest. I skimmed over the desert. If you thought the rainforest was boring, big or anything remotely negative, just wait till you see this half of Sumeru, or rather 2/3. The Great Red Sand, or the Sumeru Desert, is the polar opposite to Sumeru, only sharing Dendro Grunner in the northern parts and the grabby sigils all around. Outside of that, everything is the polar opposite. The desert is much more unwelcoming, actively trying to foil the more temperate part of the nation. Puzzles are more difficult, even requiring clearance, and the terrain is wild. Cliffs sprawl high, and when you aren't in areas with cliffs, only long dead miles of sand away. However, there are, as I said, massive caves. The Hypostasis Desert, for example, only has 4 teleporters and very little content to explore, until you complete the majority of the Golden Slumber questline and unlock a massive cavern acting like a smaller version of the chasm directly underneath. It's pretty mad, but it's part of why I consider the nation overwhelming, the fact that it's locked behind a quest. Majority of teleporters, areas and mechanics are locked behind quiet, lengthy quests that, quite frankly, aren't the things I want to put time into, though I still did. This is primarily the Aranyaka and Golden Slumber quests, just so you know. Even when you ignore the content, Sumeru isn't massive despite that. The nation's been expanded like 3 or 4 times since its debut in version 3.0, and I swear it'll only get bigger later down the line. The desert has like 7 or 8 statues at the 7, and the rainforest has 6 or 7. Combined, that's around 13 to 16. I still consider Sumeru a masterpiece though, because if you can avoid overwhelming yourself and focus on keeping a healthy pace, the nation is truly an adventure to be had. The variety of environments and stuff is just peak. The amount of content can be turned from bad to good in a matter of mindset, though Genshin loves to rush its players, let's be for real. Also, last note, it seems that despite the desert's limited palette, every part of it manages to separate itself from the rest. The only inherently similar bits of the desert are the lands of Lower and Upper Setek. Okay, I've already blended comments on the gameplay into this part, so let's focus on it and go fully in depth. Genshin has a lot of mechanics that appear quite rarely, with thought-picking things that I've only seen appear in the Sub-Zero's festival arc of the story and Nilou's story quest, fighting the Violin in midair, sneaking around, and more. The reason I'm bringing this up is because it happens a lot in Sumeru. When Genshin is known for this and has a nation with a lot of content, this unique quirk is bound to pop up, once again, a lot. In Sumeru, the Aranyaka, Golden Slumber, and Arfratu's Dilemma questlines that I brought up earlier, including the third, don't just lock locations but mechanics as well. However, unlike the locations, besides clearance-related desert mechanics and the RNR melodies unlocked early on in the Aranyaka questline, these mechanics are only used within the quest themselves. Let's go questline by questline. Firstly, for the Aranyaka questline, there are 7 RNR melodies to be unlocked. There's also an item that can summon 3 times of RNR that can in turn fix elemental monuments, interactable switches, get rid of vines and break barriers, though this becomes doable with the rhythm of revival and stuff. There's then going in and out of the Dream Vanarana, which I guess can be relevant outside of quests, but not very much. Melodies can also be played to rotate big bulb barriers named Vamada, to unlock certain gateways and devices called Gloomy Path, and to activate phantasmal gates. I hope you understood everything I just said, because I hardly did. There's big ruin guards named ruin golems that you're bound to find if you go through the Aranyaka questline, and even if you didn't do that, there's at least 2 of them throughout the desert. Upon doing certain quests, some of these will become active, and you can actually go ahead and shoot out of them. This happens in 2 quests that I know of, but it's never expanded upon. On top of that, for a specific ruin golem in the Arfratu's Dilemma quest, you must undo Suda's flow to break barriers. That's, yet again, another mechanic. Golden Slumber stuff arguably has the least of this, only having a few specific mechanisms only found in places exclusive to the quest themselves, such as those turrets that shoot red cubes for some reason. Otherwise, the Sand Slate is pretty helpful overall. Either way, I'm sure you feel overwhelmed already just hearing about all of this. Imagine being on the front lines actually interacting with these things. Damn. Though, I'll stop complaining about the exclusive obscure stuff. Just remember Scorched Starshrooms exist. Outside of the locked away mechanics, the grabby 4-leaf sigils, plants that create more of them, Dendro and its interactables, the Withering and its respective mechanics, bouncy mushrooms and Triana seeds all have a place in Sumeru as a whole. There's of course Dendroculi and stuff as well, but that's a given. All these mechanics are masterpieces in themselves due to the simple, effective nature of how they work. There's the stamina flowers I mentioned, which only help more in conjunction with the sigils to create a fun, casual environment to explore. So why is it so overwhelming? Ironically, wisdom. On top of all the stuff I said when it comes to obscurities, bouncy mushrooms and Triana seeds have 3 different states. However, that isn't so bad. Let's go to the desert instead, where integrating complicated machinery is everywhere throughout the desert.
Dad, why are they so strict with me? I'm always the only one who gets in trouble.
Just leave me alone! Don't worry, I won't damage your precious reputation.
Alright, Dad. Let's start over.
In the first few areas, primal obelisks that require little collectibles around the desert are the main goal, with other things such as sandglasses, cells activating a variety of hidden puzzles, blue things to activate places giving those cells, elevators, rip-off sealies, and more found throughout. Go a little further and you've got sandstorms, frozen rift hounds, butterflies you have to bring back to chest to unlock them, soul bells, like, wow, it just keeps going. Inazuma does this, but we've agreed the nation hates us. I'd agree Sumeru is like an iceberg, having simple mechanics on the surface, but if you want to do any serious exploration, you've got to get your hands dirty. That's confirmed when the very thing you'd be exploring for, the Tree of Dreams, to use your Dendro sigils, is locked at the end of the Aranyaka quest. For anyone who doesn't know, that quest is at least like 11 or 12 hours long. That's the size of a nation's full storyline, or a little less. I hope that explains it being overwhelming. If you can either casually avoid this splurge of content or get through it, you'll discover Sumeru was a masterpiece. I didn't even mention the Eremites, and quite frankly, I don't want to. Let's get moving on to the next thing, story and characters.
Who would have thought the world would be so eager for my birth? I remember you, Booer, the god of wisdom. and standing beside you, the Traveler.
Is he all-knowing and powerful now, like Greater Lord Rukkhadevata? No, I can't feel the same kind of divinity I felt from the Greater Lord. It seems that the sages didn't get the chance to infuse the divine knowledge capsules into him. But even still, he has undoubtedly become a true god now.
I wouldn't be the first to say Sumeru's story is a banger. Amazing characters, plot, sometimes rough pacing, but overall a big improvement over Inazuma, and really locked in with the 5-act idea. Technically it's 6 with the Khanr'iah quest, in fact. You've got the story gradually pulling you into more complicated stakes, with it starting with just TIghnari and Collei, then to Dunyarzard, Dehya and Nilou, and over time building the gang of Nilou, Dehya, Cyno, Alhaitham, that Eremite NPC, and Nahida. It's nice having the Archon be your friend while still rebelling against the authority of the nation, which really mixes up Inazuma's story to create something fresh. The focus on story and innovation is honestly amazing to me, as they've really put their back into creating a true piece of art. I love the Inazuma finale, but Sumeru tops it in every way. Scaramouche's boss battle is just immaculate. Anyway, I'm not here to praise, but explain my main statement. The fact Sumeru is an overwhelming masterpiece. Of course, it'll get a little weaker now that I'm out of the general mechanics and environment. Let's look into it. I'd argue that the length is what makes the story specifically a little overwhelming. Firstly, you're jumping from the 3-act structure to the 5-act, and you're jumping from just a rushed story in general. We're of course used to it now with both Sumeru and Fontaine following it, but it wasn't as simple then. As well as this, the quests themselves are quite lengthy, with the finale of chapter 3 clocking in at almost 4 hours. The first act is 3, the second is 2.5, and the third and fourth are both 2 hours each. Compare this to the nations earlier in the game. Mondstadt going over an hour once, and Liyue just hardly reaching it twice. Inazuma clocks in at a good 2-hour beginning and 2.5-hour ending, but the middle is only 1 hour. And don't forget, Sumeru has 2 more acts than these other ones. Remember, all of these hour timers are based off cutscenes alone, like dialogue and all that, so imagine the gameplay. Do you understand why I call it overwhelming now? For a perspective, if we add it all together, Sumeru's story is 13.5 hours long. Mondstadt doesn't even reach 3 hours in total, Liyue is almost 5, and Inazuma is 6. That's only 1 hour longer than Sumeru's story if you combine all 3 nations together. I think that proves my point. Video over. I'm joking of course, but you gotta agree right, the story is overwhelming. Though, I'll remind you again, a masterpiece nonetheless. The Wanderer's arc linking back to previous events is also beautiful, and helps connect the story far more. I love his awesome fight. I mean, I knew the theme off by heart and everything, but I was jumping around excited when I got to it. I love the Nahida mum role she's been giving for the Wanderer, and I just love everything about them. Also, as I mentioned earlier, the display of different groups and cultures being connected by one desire of saving the Archon helps paint her as a more important objective, alongside giving the story as a whole more depth, and the finale shows the other places of death being given to those characters as well. You play from all their perspectives, or from the perspective of the Traveler helping them out, and the high structure is awesome for showing what they can all do. It's a perfect climax of Sumeru's story, as a big chunk of what Sumeru was about is everybody in the gang settling their differences. Watching this happen, but still having differences such as Dehya declining her invite to the Academia afterwards is beautiful and realistic to an extent. Okay, moving on now, just wanted to display that masterpiece stuff. On top of the inherent length, there's the Khanr'iah quest I mentioned, and not just that, but Wanderer's quest in the interlude chapter. Liyue has 2 extra quests as well that add on to the interlude and nation-exclusive chapters, that being the Shenhe and Chasm ones. In fact, there's also a Dainsleif Archon quest, though adding the extra 3.5-hour Chasm quest, 2-hour Shenhe quest, and 1-hour Dainsleif quest, we then get 6.5 hours, which when added to Liyue's 5-hour runtime still doesn't beat Sumeru. Okay, sorry, I just had to point it out. Can we also talk about how slow the Aru village arc is? Like damn, I like the Shakespeare 5-act structure, but they could have improved acts 3 and 4 a bit. Besides that, the characters are pretty chill, and while there's a lot, that's a given for a nation. If we're counting, there's 13 in total. Inazuma has 15, Liyue has 18, and Mondstadt has 20. Seems like the longer a nation is out, the more it has, so maybe in due time Sumeru will catch up. I mean, Fontaine's got 8 that I know of, to be fair. So, in the retrospect of the characters, Sumeru wasn't that bad. It's not overwhelming, but damn are the characters that are in Sumeru great. A masterpiece, wouldn't you say? Okay, I'm done trying to find things to talk about here. Let's move into this video's special section, Dendro. This part will contribute to both the overwhelming part and the masterpiece part, but think about it, wouldn't a totally new element be a big part of why Sumeru feels so big? At least when it came out? When Sumeru released, unlike any other nation so far, its element released with it due to Nahida being locked away. This didn't just make it playable, but also added tons of new reactions such as Bloom, Burgeon and Hyper Bloom instead of just burning. There's also Quicken, for example. This has of course taken over the meta of Genshin, as you can still see, but continue thinking about it. Instead of just experiencing a whole new jungle and desert world, you're experiencing a whole new element to play around with. Using Collei or TIghnari to begin with, and as patches came out, Alhaitham, Nahida, Kaveh, Khanr'iah, Yao, Dendro, Traveler and Baiju all released alongside them. Sumeru was also the only nation to release so many characters of its element in a few patches, being 6, as a place like Inazuma for example only had Kujo Sara, Raiden, Yae and Kuki, that's 5, when they were far more spread out. When you're getting a bunch of new Dendro characters from a new nation, it's just more and more overwhelming. The update itself is. Even going back and exploring old places, or continuing to explore current ones will never be the same, as enemies such as Dendro Slimes or Meter Trolls can now trigger all the new reactions added in 3.0. And in any place added after that version, especially Sumeru, those new things will be intentionally set up, therefore happening more and overwhelming the player with new content. Sumeru was fresh as hell, alright? I know I'm like a year and a half late to the party, but I'm making videos on every nation, and Sumeru is my favourite if you couldn't tell. Dendro is also a cool element, but I've used it the least since, despite its attempts at being more incorporated, I struggle to have characters I want to build that have it. They're all from Sumeru, remember? I don't want to build Kaveh. I'm just going to focus on Wrightsley, when I get to Fontaine that is. Spoiler alert, as recording this, I've been underwater diving for hours straight. Conclusion time, I think I made my brief summary on Dendro well enough. It contributes, and it's interesting overall that it was the only non-existing element for years and was the forgotten one. Now it is the unforgotten one. Sumeru was actually awesome, I love it, but damn did it take effort. I'd know, but I'd do it once again. I'll never be as young as I once was when I did the first 3, but as a returning player finishing my thorough investigation of Sumeru, I love it. The characters, mechanics and environment. The soundtrack especially. I mean, I've still got to add the desert battle themes to my Genshin playlist. I haven't been to Fontaine yet, so don't expect a video on it next week. I'll probably cover Tartaglia or Child and why he's so unique or something. Once I've gone through Fontaine, I'll cover it, but right now, I'm considering calling it why Fontaine is a perfect comeback. Let's be for real though, on top of me not going there yet, it ain't even done yet. Alright, peace people, love y'all, like and sub, and yeah.